My name is Claire Bennett. And I was 27 years old when my boyfriend texted me that he was moving in with his professor to focus on his studies. The message arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was sitting in my car during lunch, eating a dry turkey sandwich from the deli beneath my office. Hey babe, I've been thinking, and I've decided to move into Dr. Evelyn Hart's guest house for a while. It's purely academic. She's mentoring me on my thesis, and this will help me focus. The guest house is perfect for studying. Don't be insecure about this. It's a career opportunity. Love you. I read it once, then twice, then a third time. Slowly. Because I honestly thought stress had rearranged the words on my screen. My boyfriend, Ethan Cole, was 25. We had been together for 2.5 years. He was completing a master's degree in psychology at a respectable state university. And for the last 6 months, his entire world had begun revolving around Dr. Evelyn Hart. She was 48. Married. Polished. And well known in her department. Ethan described her as brilliant, sophisticated, and the only person who truly understood his academic potential. At first, I tried not to be suspicious. Professors mentored students. Graduate programs demanded long hours. Thesis work blurred professional boundaries. I told myself every reasonable explanation I could think of, because I loved him. And because loving someone sometimes makes you work harder to defend their behavior than they ever work to deserve your trust. But then came the private dinners to discuss research, the late-night emergency consultations that somehow required Ethan to shower, shave, and wear the expensive cologne I had given him for Christmas. The weekend conferences that always seemed to include only the two of them. I raised my concerns twice. Both times, he made me feel ashamed for even asking. She's my professor, Claire. She's married. She has children practically our age. You're being controlling. You're threatened because she respects my intelligence. After the second argument, I stopped asking questions aloud. I started paying attention instead. I noticed how he tilted his phone away when messages appeared, how he came home from supposedly academic meetings, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine, how conversations about research always seemed to happen in wine bars, boutique hotels, or restaurants where entrees cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Then, 3 days before that text, Ethan asked me to co-sign a lease. He claimed he had found a small studio near campus where he could finish his thesis without distractions. His credit score was poor, and the landlord required a guarantor. The rent was $1.850 a month, just until I graduate, he had said, holding both my hands as if the warmth of his palms could make the request seem less dangerous. You know, I'd never let this affect you financially. I told him I needed time to think. Co-signing wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a legal obligation. If he stopped paying, the landlord could come after me. My credit, my savings, my future apartment applications, everything could be dragged into his debt. Now, 3 days later, he was moving into his professor's guest house. Something didn't fit. I replied with 4 words. Good luck with that. Then I opened the lease he had emailed me. The document was still waiting for my digital signature. I stared at the property address, copied it, and searched county records. The website was public and free, though buried beneath enough outdated menus to discourage anyone without patience. 20 minutes later, I found the deed. The studio apartment near campus was actually a 2-bedroom condo in one of the nicest neighborhoods in town. The owners were Evelyn Hart and her husband, Michael Hart. They had purchased it as an investment property 2 years earlier. I sat completely still behind the steering wheel. Ethan wasn't moving into a guest house. He had asked me to co-sign a lease on property owned by the woman he claimed was merely mentoring him. I would guarantee the rent. She would collect the payments. And if their arrangement collapsed, I would remain legally responsible for an apartment I had never lived in. While my boyfriend played house with a married professor, nearly twice his age, the betrayal was bad enough. The planning behind it was worse. He hadn't simply lied to me about their relationship. He had tried to build himself a financial escape route using my name, my credit, and my trust. I looked again at his message. Don't be insecure. Those words felt different now. They weren't reassurance. They were a command. A warning designed to silence me before I could ask the right question. My lunch sat untouched in its wrapper. As I began searching for Michael Hart, I found him on LinkedIn. He was the chief operating officer of a regional construction firm. His profile showed a calm, middle-aged man in a navy suit, standing beside a glass conference table. Married for 22 years. According to an anniversary post, 2 children, both in college. It took another few minutes to locate his work email through the company's public directory. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For one brief second, I wondered whether I was about to destroy multiple lives. Then I remembered the lease. Ethan had already decided whose life was expendable. Mine. I wrote a short, factual email. Hello, Mr. Hart. I'm sorry to contact you this way, but I believe you deserve to know what is happening. My boyfriend, Ethan Cole, has been involved in what appears to be an inappropriate relationship with your wife, Dr. Evan Hart. Today, he informed me that he plans to move into our guest house to focus on his studies. 3 days ago, he asked me to co-sign a lease for a property I have now confirmed belongs to you and your wife. I have attached screenshots of his message and the lease agreement. I'm sorry to be the person bringing this to you. I attached everything: the text, the lease, the county property record. Then I pressed send. My heart pounded so hard that my fingertips went numb. Afterward, I blocked Ethan's number and returned to work. I barely accomplished anything for the rest of the day. Numbers blurred across my monitor. Every few minutes, I caught myself imagining his reaction when he realized I had stopped being confused. By Friday evening, the silence broke. At exactly 8:12, my apartment door opened. I was in the kitchen making spaghetti carbonara when Ethan walked in, using the key I had forgotten he still possessed. His face was red. His eyes were wild. His entire body trembled with fury. "What did you do?" he demanded. I kept stirring the sauce, made pasta. "You contacted her husband?" I turned down the heat and finally looked at him. "Yes." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I informed a man that his wife was moving her graduate student into their property, while that student's girlfriend was expected to guarantee the rent. His jaw tightened. "We were not sleeping together." "Then why are you moving into her condo?" "It's academic mentorship." "You called it a guest house." "It basically is." "You asked me to co-sign the lease?" "I needed financial security." The words left his mouth before he realized what they revealed. I set the wooden spoon down carefully. "Your security," I said quietly, "was supposed to be my liability." His expression shifted. For the first time, anger gave way to fear. "Claire, listen to me. This doesn't have to change anything between us." A laugh escaped me, but there was no humor in it. "You plan to move into another woman's property, a lie about who owned it, and make me financially responsible if your arrangement collapsed." "It wasn't like that." "Then explain what it was like." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That silence was the first honest thing he had given me in months. The silence between us stretched until the carbonara began to hiss in the pan. Ethan finally found his voice. "You're making this look worse than it is." I turned off the stove and faced him completely. "No," I said. "You did that all by yourself." He ran both hands through his hair, pacing across my living room as though he were the victim trying to process a tragedy. Every few steps he glanced toward me, searching for a crack in my resolve. "Claire." Nothing physical happened. I folded my arms. "You expect me to believe that, I swear, you were moving into property owned by a married woman. She believed in my future, and I believed in you." Those words hit harder than I intended. His shoulders dropped for a split second before he straightened again. "She understands my research in ways you never could." There it was. Not an apology, not remorse. Just another attempt to convince me that I wasn't intelligent enough to understand his special connection. "My job isn't to understand your thesis," I answered quietly. "It was to love you honestly. You couldn't even manage that." His expression hardened. "You've always been insecure around successful people." I stared at him. For months he had slowly chipped away at my confidence until I questioned my own instincts. Every concern became jealousy. Every question became control. Every uncomfortable feeling became my fault. Now that I finally saw the truth, his script sounded almost rehearsed. "You know what's interesting?" I asked. "What?" "You haven't once apologized for lying." "I didn't lie." "You called a condo a guest house." I simplified it. "You hid who owned it." "It wasn't relevant." "You wanted me to guarantee the lease." "I was going to pay." "You still haven't answered the most important question." He frowned. "What question? Why didn't you simply tell me Dr. Hart owned the property?" For the first time, he looked away. That tiny movement confirmed everything. Because he already knew I would refuse, he took a slow breath before trying a different strategy. "Claire." I made a mistake. His voice softened. "I got caught up in everything. She kept telling me how talented I was. She believed I could publish. She introduced me to people in the field. I started depending on her. And things became complicated." "How complicated?" "She wanted me closer, so we could work." "And you thought asking your girlfriend to finance that arrangement was reasonable?" No, he admitted again. Quieter this time. "I wasn't thinking." "You were thinking very carefully." He blinked. "You found a backup plan. You found someone who made you feel important. You kept me around in case your new life didn't work." His face drained of color. "That isn't true." "Then why ask me to co-sign?" He had no answer. Instead, tears suddenly filled his eyes. Real or manufactured, I couldn't tell anymore. "I never wanted to hurt you." "You already did." "I still love you." I looked at the man I had imagined marrying, the man whose graduate school deadlines I had supported, whose rent I had helped cover during difficult semesters, whose anxiety attacks I had sat through at 3 a.m. Somewhere along the way, the person standing in front of me had become a stranger wearing Ethan's face. "You don't treat people you love like insurance policies." His breathing became uneven. "She'll lose everything." I wasn't talking about her. She could lose her job. She should have thought about that. "You don't understand." "No," I replied. "You don't understand." The room fell quiet again. Finally, I pointed toward the hallway. "Leave your key on the counter." He didn't move. "Claire, our relationship ended the moment you expected me to finance your affair." "It wasn't an affair." "Then let Dr. Hart explain that to her husband." His composure shattered. You've ruined everything. His voice echoed through the apartment. You had no right. I had every right to protect myself. You've destroyed my career. I didn't ask you to lie. You destroyed my future. I didn't ask you to manipulate me. You're selfish. I almost smiled. It amazed me how quickly accountability transformed into accusation. You're free to leave, I said calmly. His breathing became ragged. You'll regret this. I already regret waiting this long. With one angry motion, he pulled my apartment key from his pocket and threw it across the kitchen. It struck a cabinet before clattering onto the floor. Fine, he shouted. You'll see how badly you've messed this up. Then he slammed the front door so hard the picture frames rattled. The apartment became silent, painfully silent. I stood in the kitchen for several minutes without moving. The dinner was cold. The pasta had overcooked. The future I thought I had was gone. Oddly enough, the strongest feeling wasn't heartbreak. It was relief. The constant anxiety I'd been carrying for months had disappeared almost instantly. My instincts hadn't betrayed me. I'd simply ignored them. The next morning, I called an emergency locksmith. Changing every lock on a Saturday cost me $180, worth every cent. By Sunday afternoon, another knock came at my door. This time it wasn't Ethan. It was his mother. Linda Cole had always been kind to me during family holidays. She baked homemade cookies and remembered birthdays and hugged everyone before leaving. Today, there wasn't a trace of warmth on her face. We need to talk, she said. I stepped outside, closing the apartment door behind me. About what? What you've done to my son? I waited. You humiliated him. I told the truth. You could have handled this privately. I tried trusting him privately. He says nothing inappropriate happened. Then he has nothing to fear. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You've destroyed his academic future because you were jealous. No. I met her eyes without hesitation. Your son tried convincing me to guarantee the lease for property owned by his married professor, while hiding who actually owned it. She looked genuinely confused. What property? The condo. He told us it was university housing. I felt my stomach tighten. So, he lied to you too. Her expression slowly changed. Confusion, then doubt, then fear, before she could ask another question. My phone vibrated. A new email had arrived. The sender's name made my heart skip. Michael Hart. I looked up from the screen. I said quietly. This situation is about to become much bigger than either of us expected. I opened Michael Hart's email while Ethan's mother stood silently in front of me. The message was short, professional, almost painfully calm. Claire, thank you for contacting me. I appreciate you bringing this information to my attention. My wife and I will be handling this matter privately and appropriately. That was it. No anger. No accusation. No dramatic threats. Just a man who had received the kind of message nobody ever wants to receive. Ethan's mother watched my face carefully. Is that from him? I nodded. She looked away. For the first time since arriving, she seemed less like an angry parent defending her son, and more like someone realizing she might have only heard one side of a very complicated story. I need to go, she whispered. She walked back to her car without another argument. I watched her leave and wondered if she was angry at me, or if she was beginning to wonder how much her son had hidden. The following days were strangely quiet. Too quiet. I expected Ethan to keep calling from different numbers. I expected another confrontation. I expected some kind of explosion. Instead, nothing happened. Then, 1 week later, Michael Hart's wife contacted me. Her name was Dr. Revenyx Art. the woman Ethan had spent months describing as nothing more than a mentor. She asked if I would meet her for coffee. At first, I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to become more involved in their marriage. But something about her message felt different. There was no hostility, no blame, only exhaustion. So I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop near my office on a rainy Tuesday morning. When she walked in, I immediately understood why Ethan had admired her. She was composed, elegant, the kind of person who looked like she had spent her entire life learning how to remain calm under pressure. But when she sat across from me, I noticed the details, the tired eyes, the way she kept twisting her wedding ring, the small cracks in the confidence she showed the world. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said. "You don't have to thank me." "I do." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "You gave me information I needed. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." She looked down. "So why?" For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then she finally said something I never expected. This wasn't the first time I suspected something. I looked up. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "My husband has always been charming, intelligent, respected. People trust him." Her fingers tightened around the cup. "And sometimes people who receive admiration for a long time start believing they deserve whatever attention comes their way." I stayed quiet. I noticed changes over the years. She continued. "Different students, different explanations. Always innocent, always academic. Why didn't you leave?" Her eyes moved toward the window. "Because suspicion is not proof." That sentence stayed with me, because I understood it. I had spent months feeling something was wrong without being able to prove it. I thought I was imagining things, she admitted. I thought maybe I was becoming paranoid. I almost laughed because those were the exact words Ethan had used against me. "You weren't..." She looked at me. "No, I wasn't." The coffee shop became quieter as she continued. "When I received your email, I looked into the property records. You knew about the condo. I knew we owned it." She shook her head, slowly. "What I didn't know was that my husband intended to let Ethan move in there." Her voice became colder. "He wasn't just hiding an inappropriate relationship. He was using our shared property to create a private arrangement." I nodded. "That was the part that hurt me too." "The lease?" "Yes." She looked genuinely disgusted. "He convinced your boyfriend to find someone else to guarantee the payments. He asked me because his credit wasn't good." Of course, she closed her eyes briefly. "Your boyfriend wasn't just risking your relationship. He was trying to protect himself financially." Hearing someone else say it made the reality heavier, because part of me still wondered if I had been too harsh. If maybe I had destroyed something that could have been handled differently. But sitting across from Evelyn, I realized something important. I hadn't destroyed their lives. I had simply stopped protecting their secrets. A few days later, everything exploded. The university announced that it had opened a formal review into Dr. Hart's relationship with graduate students. Apparently, Evelyn had reported the situation to the university's ethics office. The investigation moved quickly. Faculty members were questioned, records were reviewed, messages were examined, and suddenly the person Ethan had described as untouchable wasn't untouchable anymore. Ethan reached out again. This time, his message was different. "Claire, please, we need to talk." I ignored it. Another message came. "You don't understand what you've done." Ignored. Then, "I'm losing everything." I stared at that one for a long time, because there was a part of me that still cared. 2.5 years together don't disappear overnight. But caring about someone doesn't mean accepting everything they do. I finally replied, "I hope you learn from this." His response came immediately. "You're really going to act like you had no part in this?" I read it several times. Then I put my phone down, because somehow, even after everything, he still believed the same thing, that consequences were something other people caused, not something he created. The first real sign that things were getting worse came when his older sister, Melissa, showed up at my apartment. She arrived angry, not confused, not hurt, angry. My brother needs his deposit back. I stared at her. What deposit? The one he paid when he moved in. I almost laughed. Ethan never moved in here. He told me he was living with you. He stayed here sometimes. He said you agreed to everything. He wasn't on my lease. He never paid rent. He never paid utilities. There is no deposit. Melissa's expression changed. You're lying. No. I looked her directly in the eyes. He lied to you. She stepped closer. You ruined his future. No. He made choices that affected his future. He loved you. I swallowed. Then he had a strange way of showing it. She left without another word, but I knew something had changed. The people around Ethan were finally starting to realize that the version of events he had been telling them wasn't the whole truth, and I had a feeling this was only the beginning. The weeks that followed felt like watching a storm move farther away from me while still hearing the thunder. Every few days, another piece of information surfaced. Another consequence. Another reminder that I had not created this disaster. I had simply stopped standing in front of it. The university completed its preliminary investigation faster than anyone expected. Evelyn contacted me one evening after the announcement was released. They found evidence of multiple policy violations. She said, I sat quietly on my couch, listening. Ethan wasn't the first graduate student. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? There were other concerns over the years. Other situations that were explained away. I closed my eyes. A part of me wanted to be shocked, but another part wasn't surprised. People rarely make one terrible decision out of nowhere. They usually practice becoming that person first. The university suspended him, pending a full hearing. Evelyn continued. And Ethan, she hesitated. He has been removed from working with him. The department is trying to find another advisor. I thought about how Ethan had once told me Dr. Hart was the person who would launch his career, the person who would change his future. Now that same person had become the reason his plans were falling apart, but the most difficult part was realizing that Ethan still didn't seem to understand. A week later, I received an unexpected visit. This time it was Ethan's father, Robert. Unlike his wife, he didn't arrive angry. He arrived tired. I wanted to talk man to man. I almost smiled at the phrase, except I wasn't a man, and apparently, he still saw me as someone who needed to be lectured, instead of someone who had been hurt. I'm listening. My son made mistakes. That's an understatement. He's losing his degree. He's losing the path he chose. Robert Sahil. You could have handled this differently. I looked at him. Everyone keeps saying that because you went straight to his professor's wife. No. I shook my head. I went to the person who had the right to know. He looked uncomfortable. Ethan says you wanted revenge. Did Ethan tell you he asked me to sign a lease for a property owned by Dr. Hart? Silence. That was becoming my answer more often than words. Did he tell you he never mentioned who owned it? Another silence. Did he tell you that if things went wrong, I would have been responsible for thousands of dollars? Robert looked down. No. Exactly. I softened my voice. I didn't ruin your son's life. I refused to let him use mine as a safety net. He left without another argument, but the pressure didn't stop there. A few days later, my employer's HR department contacted me. Someone had filed a complaint, accusing me of harassment and interfering with Ethan's academic career. When my manager asked me to explain, I felt my heart sink. Not because I had done anything wrong, because I knew exactly where it came from. I brought every piece of evidence: the original message, the lease, the property records, the timeline. My manager read everything carefully. Then he leaned back. "Claire, this appears less like harassment and more like someone trying to retaliate." That word stayed with me. Retaliation. A word I had never imagined would become part of my life. But Ethan was not finished. The final attempt came late one night. My building security camera captured him standing in the lobby. He wasn't trying to force his way inside. He wasn't yelling. He was just standing there, waiting. When security asked him to leave, he handed over an envelope. It was addressed to me. Inside was a 6-page handwritten letter. I sat at my kitchen table reading every word. Most of it was about how much he loved me, how I had misunderstood him, how I had destroyed something beautiful. One sentence stopped me. "You were supposed to support me when things became complicated." I stared at that line for a long time, because that was the part Ethan never understood. Support did not mean surrendering my dignity. Love did not mean accepting betrayal. Partnership did not mean becoming someone's backup plan. A month later, I saw him again, completely by accident. I was shopping at a grocery store near my old neighborhood when I noticed him standing near the checkout. For a second, neither of us moved. He looked different. The confidence was gone. The expensive clothes were replaced with simple ones. The person who once walked into my apartment, believing he could explain everything away, now looked like someone who had finally realized the world would not bend for him. "Claire." I considered walking away, but something made me stop. 5 minutes. We stepped outside. He looked at the ground. "I know I messed up." I waited. I got caught up in everything. The attention. He nodded slowly. "She made me feel important." "She made you feel admired." "Yes. And you confused that with love." His eyes filled with regret. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did." "I know." A long silence followed. Then he said the words I had expected. "You didn't have to destroy everything." I looked at him. "Ethan, you asked me to financially protect you while you moved toward another person. It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." He wiped his eyes. "I still love you." I believed, he believed, that, and somehow, that made it sadder. Because someone can love you and still hurt you. Someone can care about you and still choose themselves over you. "Do you think you can forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know." He looked surprised. "But maybe someday I won't think about it anymore." That was the closest thing to forgiveness I could offer. We walked away from each other that day, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was finally getting myself back. 6 months after that message changed everything. My life looked completely different. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, because I needed to understand why I ignored my own instincts for so long. I focused on my career. I earned a promotion. I rebuilt my confidence. I wasn't ready to date yet. And that was okay. For a long time, I had confused being loved with being needed. Now I was learning the difference. As for Ethan, I heard through mutual friends that he eventually transferred programs and continued his degree elsewhere. His path became harder, his timeline changed. But he still had a future. Dr. Hart resigned after the university hearing. His marriage ended. The condo that had started this entire situation became part of the divorce settlement. There was something strangely fitting about that. The place where he planned to build a secret life became the place that exposed everything. Looking back, people often ask if I regret sending that email, if I regret changing so many lives. My answer is simple. No. I didn't destroy a relationship. I didn't destroy a career. I didn't destroy a future. I stopped helping people hide the truth. Ethan made his choices. Dr. Hart made his choices. And Evelyn deserved to know what was happening in her own marriage. I deserved to know I was not being used. The collapse happened quickly. 48 hours changed everything. But the truth was, the foundation had been cracking for months. I just happened to be the person who finally stopped pretending I didn't hear it.